All stations, stop Spider-Man.
Okay, so when you were in school and you like you start falling behind all your assignments and you try to like rally together to get them all done at the last minute and you think you can pull it off and you never do, like ever.
Mm-hmm.
Or like if you're at work and you're behind on a lot of work and it's clearly overwhelming you, and whatever you do, you're not going to be successful at what you're trying to accomplish in this like specific task or multiple tasks, right? I feel like that's kind of what happens when movies get released to digital video like immediately after they come out in theaters. I think a lot of these studios and studio people are really scared that there weren't successful like theater runs, and so they need to buoy like the box office by like, look, you can watch it from the comfort of your own home now, you know. And we were talking about Evil Dead Rise doing that too, because that was like not a runaway hit, but it was a very successful movie for the 5th Evil Dead movie.
Yeah.
That's been dormant for 10 years since the last like reboot of the Evil Dead franchise. I saw it like on a Tuesday and it's like 6th week in theaters and it was packed.
Yeah.
You know?
Evil Dead just seems to have that appeal though. Like,
I mean, that is also horror, even outside
it's
of
horror,
like,
but
just
also
the
Evil Dead is like, hey, you want to see some fucked up shit? Like, go see the movie, and it works.
I mean, yeah,
every time.
kind of. That's true.
So,
but I think that's important to distinguish when a studio is really confident in the movie that they've made, and maybe Evil Dead's a bad example because by many accounts, they were very confident about it. Like the test screening, which mean nothing, but it's important to say test screening tested incredibly positive.
To streaming at a certain point, like
yeah, and it tested so well that they're like, oh shit, we might be able to make money off of this and not just like put it on the content mill.
Mm-hmm.
And not only is it like, I think the most successful Evil Dead, it's also like the first one to get like sequels fast tracked.
Oh wow,
yeah, or at the very least, like if not fast tracked in 2 to 3 years, they're like, no, we're definitely doing one. We're not just going to talk about
Although
it.
they've done that. I mean, after the other reboot that happened came out, they did the same thing where it was like, we're doing a sequel, it's done very well, and then it just didn't happen. Like,
oh yeah, that's true. That's true.
So, I remember that the other one. Yeah, the other one made like 97 million. Like, that's pretty good for a horror movie. But this one has made nearly 150 at this point. So, I guess yeah fast track that shit.
Yeah.
But
so strange result with that one heading to streaming pretty quickly.
I wonder if there's just like everything is so algorithmically driven right now in like an embarrassing way that there might just be like a computer program that just goes, okay, now is the time to put it on streaming. And like they don't think about it, like they just go, okay, and they just do it. And they're not thinking about any sort of like none of these people in charge of anything right now seem to be long-term thinkers.
No, especially one David Zaslav, who has gone to bat harder than anyone to defend the honor of the Flash movie, which by many accounts is one of the worst atrocities ever released to the human public.
You know what's weird? The movie got like the Flash got surprisingly average reviews.
Yeah, and not just like at the beginning when people were like, this is the fucking greatest thing ever. I'm doing lines of coke off Warner Brothers' dick, you know, like, which was what the fucking response was at this. And I could tell immediately, like, they're overselling it because they need to make all their money back because they spent too much on this. People forgot it was like a 10-year process to get this movie made.
Yeah, this was an embarrassing, just, it's the poster child for just how embarrassing Warner Brothers has been at handling some of their chief properties.
Yeah, also I'm your host, David Crespo. That's my co-host, Matt Garingo.
Yes.
We're here to talk about The Flash, a movie we didn't see, but mostly talk about Across the Spider-Verse, a movie we did see.
We have to do Flash a little bit because we did that Batman retrospective of all those years ago.
Yeah, and Michael Keaton's back.
Michael Keaton's back, I guess.
And, yeah, kind of, maybe. It's like... It's I don't know. It is supposed to be the Burton Batman. If not for the costume, you could have fooled me. But hey, I haven't seen the movie. Maybe there's some gorgeous Gotham skylines that with that Tim Burton aesthetic. I don't know. Apologies to Andy Muschietti, who seems like a decent guy. I haven't liked his movies.
Yeah, it's weird.
Chapter 2 kind of broke me, so I was like never gonna watch this in the theater. Matt implied he would watch it.
What was that?
You did imply that you would watch it so we could talk about it at one point, and then you were like, never mind.
Well, no, I said, I texted Diego and was like, do we have to do Flash? Like, and not any like that we were even entertaining it, but it was kind of like, it feels like Keaton Batman being back should be a bigger deal, you know? Like, it really should be. And considering we did a whole thing on Batman, I was like, does that mean we have to do Flash? And we were kind of like, we both didn't want to. And so it was really one of those things where, like, if it had come down to it and we had to do it, it would have been I buy a ticket for whatever else is playing that week and then snuck into Flash, you know? Like, it would have been a move like that. But, yeah, it was weird. It was that thing of, they pushed it so hard. There was a part of me being like, is there something to this movie? You know? Like, I've talked about this. I've talked about this exact thing on the podcast, but every year there's one movie that looks objectively bad that the studios push so hard, it tricks me into going, maybe there's something to this. Like, maybe there's something going on. And the fact that, like, even when the reviews started pouring in, like, even the negative ones weren't, like, scathing, I was kind of like, maybe there's something to it. But then, like, the more that came out, it was like, oh, no, it's bad. Like, and then it was like, let's not see it. So.
Yeah.
Weird.
I want to give credit to my buddy Andrew Salazar, a writer and one of the heads of Discussing Film, because he saw it at CinemaCon. He was the only person with a sane response to me who was like, and he told me specifically, he's like, no, dude, you're not going to like this. Like, it's like the same movie as No Way Home, like structurally. And there's no, like, I still don't know who, like, Barry Allen was by the end of it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
The characterization of any character, not that they have to, like, adhere to a comic book code or something like that, right? Or the comics authority.
Yeah.
Just that, you know, as an individual movie itself, like, it didn't work. But, you know, I guess they pump something into the air at CinemaCon enough, and people get really excited about bad movies there sometimes.
How much does it cost to go to CinemaCon?
Apparently, like, your ethical standards.
Well, no, but, like, it's what it costs is you're gonna act excited because you're not gonna admit you wasted that money. You know?
I never thought about that.
Like,
it happens in Vegas too, right? Yeah. There you go. It all comes together. You're railing lines of coke in the bathroom with David Zaslav, and then you're coming out pumped for Mission Impossible previews.
But, like, also, like, what was the other movie that was, like, huge at CinemaCon that was, like, terrible?
It was Pirates of the Caribbean 5,
yeah.
And I'll never forget it. People didn't believe me. I posted screenshots of initial reactions to that movie from CinemaCon, which weren't, like, saying this is the best movie ever, but they were like, this is the best one since the first one. I think people are going to love this. And people thought I made Photoshop edits of it. And I was like, no, this is real. Like, you could Google this. I pulled them from people's Twitter accounts right now. Like, it's just...
I don't know, it must just be like that first, because, I mean, BVS, which is a movie that people have come around to, but that, like, the initial wave for BVS was like, this is one of the greatest movies ever made. Yeah. Like, and then you see it, and it's not that. It's a fine film, if you have the director's cut.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think there was also the Warner Brothers. I mean, go back to the boys.
Yeah.
The Warner Brothers guys, when they screened it at the lot, like, the producers gave it a standing ovation.
Yeah, there's that story. Then there is David Zez, whatever, saying that The Flash is the best superhero movie ever made. Like, it's like, these people are just dumb.
Yeah. And the one guy, I'm not 100% sure I buy that he does like it. I don't know. He's been very adamant about it as well, is James Gunn, who I just came off praising Guardians 3, which, you know, like, maybe I'm just a simpleton, but it's the most, like, it's my favorite movie of the year at this point, basically. Which, you know, as someone who loves those first two movies, was kind of hoping for, but didn't really expect by the end. And who's really grown as a director, I found, and a visual storyteller. I think his writing is still very
James
unique.
Gunn is a traitor.
It's a little hard
I think
for me to get excited about anything else he says now. Yeah,
I think I'm in my breakup phase with James Gunn.
Okay.
Because I wasn't as over the moon about Guardians, but it was one of those where, like, I just think the grimness of that movie just was a little off-putting for me. And
it is fucking bleak.
Yeah, and I don't think it's one of those, like, he clearly set out to do that and accomplished it. So, like, I have to give him some credit, and it did feel like a big step up in terms of his directing. But I also wasn't a fan of Suicide Squad, his version. And now that he's in charge of, like, DC, it's weird, and I see him shill for the Flash, which, like, he's got to do to some level, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, yeah, because now he is the head of.
But now I'm at a stage with what's been going on at Warner Brothers lately, where I'm like, if anyone works with Warner Brothers, they're a traitor. Like, they've turned into, like, the anti-art studio, right? And I think other filmmakers are seeing that, like, they're trying to take advantage of the chaos going on at Warner Brothers, being like, well, they desperately want credibility back, so I will maybe sign up my next movie there because I can get a bit of a blank check now that they've lost people like Nolan, you know? There's stories of them trying to get Nolan to get back at Warner Brothers, right?
Yeah. I think David Zaslav just recently, as last week, with the time recording this, was like, oh, we'll welcome him back with open arms or whatever. I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically it, right? Silence from the camp that message was sent out to, because he's not fucking interested in any of that. You think Christopher Nolan's not, like, losing sleep over what's happening at Warner Brothers?
But there are stories about PTA setting up his next movie at Warner Brothers.
Yes.
And so I feel like there are people like that who are trying to, they want to get their projects off the ground, and they're willing to work with someone like that, which Hollywood, no matter what, you're going to sell your soul to get big projects made. It's just the nature of the game. But Warner Brothers is so nakedly awful right now that I'm not happy with anyone working with them, frankly. And James Gunn can go like, well, it's a great opportunity. I get to play with the whole DC universe. I'm like, good for you, but, like, you're working for a horrible organization. And I don't know how I feel about it anymore. So right now, I think I'm off the James Gunn hype train. Despite being so vocal about him at the beginning of the last decade, being the world's biggest fan of Super, apparently.
Yeah. I mean, hey, is that a failed blockbuster?
I don't know what that is. I really don't. But it is a movie. I was actually listening to an interview with Gunn recently, and he said that he was basically going to quit directing after Super.
I think we listened to the same interview.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, that's the Michael Rosenbaum interview, right?
Yeah, they keep getting recommended to me, so, like, I'll click on it, and I saw that part where he talked about, like, he almost quit directing.
Yeah. And, to his credit, in that same interview, he does call it. He's like, they're getting rid of the mid-budget movies. Like, that's me. I don't have what's the trajectory of my career now if I stick with this? And he found one, and I think he's very good at it still. I'm obviously much more a fan of the Suicide Squad than you, and apparently a lot of other people who were like, yeah, whatever about that movie.
I don't even hate it. It's just, like, very half-baked. Like, and
I stand by it. It's something he kind of needed to get out of his system so he can make Peacemaker, which is terrific. And I know you're not going to watch it now of all times.
Yeah,
if you ever get around to it, just know it's. I think you'll enjoy that much more than what else he's done recently.
All right.
By a significant margin.
Yeah, but it's not happening.
But again, that's not the world you live in currently.
Yeah.
Where that's going to be acceptable to sit down and watch.
And I also straight up just hated the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special.
Oh,
which I thought was just bad.
Oh.
But hey. It almost felt like Gunn maybe had a one more picture deal with Disney he wanted to get out of, so he just agreed to do that.
No.
Satisfy some sort of contractual obligation.
Well, I don't know if you remember this. This is pre-firing even. This is, I think, pre-Guardians 2 release, like at least in the marketing lead up to it. A journalist who's not worth remembering their name because they're a scumbag. But they were interviewing him like on a one-on-one, like lengthy discussion, and they had brought up so I heard you might be in the talks for the Infinity War saga. Like this is pre those movies getting made, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, he just kind of froze, apparently.
Mm.
And so a part of me always wondered, like, was he like gonna do Guardians 2, then Infinity War, or whatever the part 1 and 2 of it were at that point, and then Guardians 3? And like that's obviously doesn't fucking matter, but that was just something I always thought of, like, because he was gonna be their guy, and now he's Warner Brothers guy.
Mm-hmm.
And just I don't know, none of that stuff matters, but it's always just something that's kind of rattled around in my brain.
But hey, he liked the Flash, so it is one of those where like people who do like this movie, it's like, what are you looking at? Like really, you know?
Oh, but you don't even know what happens in the movie.
I've
so
seen
how
trailers, dude. Like I they're not gonna get better than that.
No, I mean I agree. I've also, again, I've seen the It movies, and people still like that first one. I'm sorry, I don't get what you just said. What are you even looking at? That's what I feel. What the fuck are you even looking at?
Well, that It has that problem I think you see with a lot of movies today, where like that first one comes out and you go like, it has a lot of promise, right? And you go, I'm willing to give it the benefit of the doubt because maybe they'll like pull like something off with the second movie. And then the second movie was so bad that it's like tainted the previous one. So
yeah, some people still kind of reference the first one.
Well, it was
but no one really talks about the second
moment,
one.
That first It movie, like, but that was again Warner Brothers, even in the pre-Zaslin era, being morons, being like they had no faith in that movie being a hit, and it was like a monster hit, and like anyone worth their salt that had told you that movie would have been a hit, you know. Like,
yeah, when they remake that in like 10 to 20 years, like it will also be a hit.
Another movie, this seems to be Andy Muschietti's thing, which makes me not really trust him, is that's another movie that had like a decade-long gestation period of like people trying to adapt it, and more qualified people trying to adapt it, frankly.
Yeah, more qualified, even if they were revealed to be pieces of shit eventually.
Yeah. But like, well, here's qualified is different than good person.
Yes, yes.
But that seems to be his thing, where like there's like it, and it makes me feel like the similar way I feel about Paul W.S. Anderson, where like he gets attached to a lot of projects where like other more qualified people tried to get it made and had more interesting takes, and then Anderson comes in and is like just basically says what the studio wants to hear and gets the job, and then does like the lamest version of something possible, like. And so there's what I'm saying is there's gonna be machete heads in the future, like that are like, actually he's a trash auteur, especially if he does Brave and the Bold, like they've been saying.
Yeah, and people were like, why did he get that movie? And I'll be honest, I said that too. Like, why does he get a Batman movie? Like, what the fuck? Like, you cannot love any of the Batman movies. I don't think anyone could look at any individual Batman movie entry since the inception of the Adam West film to today, look at any of them and go, well, they're just talentless, like, anonymous hacks. They all have specific personalities and visions. Whether or not they work or you like them, I think is a different argument, right? I think that's fair to say. I don't know what Andy Muschietti's deal is besides being able to land a plane that a production company needs to land so they can make profit off of.
Yeah.
And now that is a talent to be able to land a production of this scale. That is absolutely a talent.
It isn't nothing.
It's not really a talent that is interesting or worth talking about. Which is why, frankly, I feel comfortable talking about a movie that we haven't seen. Like, honestly, really. Otherwise, I wouldn't spend this much time talking about the movie where we get, like, George Reeves cameos and Christopher Reeve cameos. Which is the most reprehensible, disgusting shit. So anyone who praised this movie without mentioning that, at least as an asterisk or an addendum, what the hell is wrong with you?
Should at least mention that fucking George Reeves fucking shot himself.
Yeah, like, arguably because he couldn't get a job outside of his role as Superman.
Yeah.
Like sorry, I like Nick Cage and I love the Kevin Smith story. That doesn't make up for that, seeing that on the big screen or
Especially
any
since Teen
screen.
Titans Go to the Movies beat you by 5 years.
Yeah. And also, when Andy Muschietti's like, we had all these other cameos planned, but, we cut them for pacing. And it's like, well, you didn't need those either, buddy. I'm sorry, but what the fuck are you talking about? And look, I know no one else gives a shit about the CW Flash anymore. That first season was fucking huge. I know it. You all know it. The guy who carried the mantle of the Flash, if you're going to give anyone a cameo, maybe that's the guy you give a cameo to. I don't know. Maybe that's not even worth arguing about because all this stuff doesn't fucking matter and movies are dead and superheroes have proven to be a net negative to society at this point. But it's just something I thought about. And, part of me's glad he's not in this movie now because it's a train wreck and morally reprehensible, arguably. But I don't know. That dude's kind of a generation's Flash, the same way Tom Welling was kind of a generation's Superman.
I mean, we talked about that. We talked about that, how, they should have just slotted him in when they were having all the problems with Ezra Miller.
Yeah.
But
maybe it's better he avoided this.
Yeah.
I guess.
This movie, honestly, this movie never should have been made.
No, it shouldn't have.
This is such an idiot. You know what? Here's how bad of an idea this was. I went to a wedding over the weekend. I was just talking to a random person. We started talking movies, and they were like, "You see the Flash?" And I was like, "No." And they were like, "What the hell was that?" I was like, "I don't know." And then this is an average person. They couldn't get Captain Cold in the movie. They couldn't get one of his villains, and I'm like, yeah, that guy's right. You should have just had a regular Flash villain. It should have just been a Flash movie.
Yeah,
it's the first.
What's so fucking hard about that?
Flash movie ever, and this is what you do. It's embarrassing.
Yeah, and you know what? I hope that we can all come together and recognize that Flashpoint as a story just kind of sucks.
Yeah.
There's writer Zach Stentz, who wrote X-Men First Class, worked on the team, the writers on the Flash TV show, right? He talked about how because season 2 of the Flash, it ends with the Flashpoint starting. They do we're doing that next season. In the writer's room for season 3, he talked about how, everyone's going over ideas this was going to last the whole season. And then everyone's like, well, it's kind of not that interesting because where it's all going to end. He has to undo it to go back. And it's like, yeah, okay, but we can still make that interesting. All right. And so they're putting all their ideas together for the length and longevity of the story to really explore what that means to the character of Barry Allen and with the supporting cast around him. And it's it's not really going to matter to these other people because they're going to get reset. Okay, it's just kind of about Barry. Okay, let's, instead of making it a season, let's make it 8 episodes. Let's make it 4 episodes. We can condense it. I think there's half an hour of material here. And they were just kind of apparently had a moment where it was just I think this is just the first episode of next season. And it was. And at the time, as I was watching that, I was like, what? Why would you just do that? Several years removed from it, I'm like, maybe you shouldn't have even done that part of the show. It's not even bad the way they do it in the show. It's not that interesting. It's just bizarre. It's no, this is kind of pointless. What the fuck?
Is Jeff Johns' name anywhere on this Flash movie?
Yeah, I think so.
Because they had him in charge of the DC stuff for a little bit. It felt like when he took over whatever DC was trying to do, all of the stories he had done got elevated a little bit. Everywhere across the board, it was we gotta adapt his stuff. And Jeff Johns is occasionally a good idea person, but the stories aren't that engaging, and they're difficult to adapt. And it is shocking that Flashpoint got elevated, considering it is maybe the worst thing Jeff Johns has ever written.
Yeah.
And was a thing that accidentally became the reboot for the entire DC universe.
Yeah, and it kind of sucks that people use it as the Flash story now.
Yeah, that's idiotic. It's barely a story.
Yeah.
But that was also, this that was just a huge mistake where they should never have brought this is a nerd comic discussion, but they should never have brought Barry Allen back as the Flash.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Like,
you know what? You're so right, and I think that's why Jeff Johns is like kind of one of the banes of my existence too. He is also emblematic of everything wrong with this, like the superhero stuff, where it's like you can't have change. I want the characters I grew up with back, and they have to be the same, so I can play with them now. I need to play with the toys that I had back then.
well, he's so weird because
other kids can't have toys; they're mine.
He will do that, but he will also radically change certain characters in a way that, like, I think it's really idiotic that like Maxwell Lord is such a big presence in the DC universe. I don't think Maxwell Lord's that interesting of a character. And he was never really a supervillain at the start. Like Johns made him one, and then he somehow becomes the main villain of fucking Wonder Woman 2. You know, which is like, how did that happen?
Well, here to go back to the CW Arrowverse stuff, Maxwell Lord's in the first season of Supergirl. He's an antagonist and then becomes a reluctant ally and then like kind of apologetic and never appears in the show again.
Yeah.
And I think it's just because they're like, oh yeah, there's not really that much you can mine out of this character. Mm-hmm. Let's just bring in Lex Luthor eventually. And they did, and it was great.
Yeah.
But it was like, some of these things have like major limitations because they're just not that interesting outside of a moment or two.
But yeah, like he's got a weird fixation on certain things. But I really think the Flash Rebirth thing was just that Green Lantern Rebirth worked much better, you know? Mm-hmm. That bring Hal Jordan back. Another character who's not that interesting, but the Green Lantern Rebirth thing at least had the extra element of it brought back the entire Green Lantern Corps, you know? Mm-hmm. And so they were like, well, let's do the same thing with the Flash. And then it's like, well, it hasn't. Did they go back to Wally West recently?
I'm not sure. I'm really tapped out of DC and Marvel stuff lately.
Yeah.
The only stuff I know is Spider-Man stuff, and that's because people are fucking rioting in the streets over the bullshit they're pulling. And I feel comfortable saying that, having not read a single Marvel comic in almost a decade at this point.
What the hell just happened where like 2 kids just died or something in those comics?
They killed off Miss Marvel, who is barely a supporting character. Apparently she only has like 23 pages of dialogue in the last several years in the Spider-Man comic. Mm-hmm. And they kill her off in that comic, but her supporting cast hasn't really responded or reacted to it. Mm-hmm. And
they'll bring her back, though.
Oh, no, that's the thing. They're totally going to bring her back. They're going to give her the power she has in the movies to make them, fucking coalesce or whatever.
Yeah, it's gonna be some rebranding thing. Like, yeah. It's also what happens when you run out of story ideas. Like, like Kamala Khan was really great when she first appeared, but at a certain point you just run out of stuff to do, right? You know? Mm-hmm. But they can't get rid of the character because she's in a fucking movie that's coming out, apparently. So they have to do, she died, so we get some headlines.
Yeah.
But
she'll come back in November when the movie comes out.
Who's writing Spider-Man right now?
A guy named Zeb Wells.
Oh, okay. What happened to Dan What's-His-Face? I know he left and then came back.
Dan Slott is coming back. He is currently prepping the Spider-Boy comic. That's the depth of his knowledge and ideas. Spider-Boy, number 1.
What are you going to do?
I don't know. Peter and Mary Jane are divorced they're separated because
drama.
She got trapped in an This is real. I told you I was going to explain the Flash to you, but it doesn't really matter at this point. Let's just move to Spider-Man. This is gonna just fucking blow your mind. So Peter and MJ, from my understanding, get sent to an alternate Earth, right? Because they have those multiverse, whatever fucking bullshit. Mm-hmm. And then Peter gets sent back, and he's like, he gets sent back to 616 Earth, and he's like, I'm gonna find you, right? Fucking Last of the Mohicans type shit, to stay alive, whatever. And she meets a guy there. I can't remember his name. But she meets a guy. And they start surviving in this post-apocalyptic wasteland together, right? They fall in love. They find a pair of kids, and they start raising them as their own. And so when Peter comes back, it's only been a day or something for him, and it's been years for her and him. So she's like, I've moved on. It's sorry, it doesn't work anymore. And then that's the precipice of the drama for them to be separated. They literally had to create an entire other universe to cause problem for them because they've already run through every other like logistical issue they could throw at them by literally like having him make a deal with the devil.
Yeah.
You know, with one more day back then. This is
That
embarrassing.
was such a sweaty explanation. My brain stopped letting new information in at a certain point.
Yeah.
Like, I just started going, like, I just, like, totally zoned out. Like,
It's, you know what? It's fine.
this is why
You
people
don't
hate
need any of
comics.
this.
Like,
No,
this-
it really is. It really is. These fucking people, they're trying to, like, keep their universes all, like, canonical and shit
I also
like
think
that.
this is why comic book nerds are, like, so psychotic. Because it's
Yes.
like, it's a sunk cost fallacy. Like, you can't, at a certain point, you can't admit you've spent this much money on issues and trade paperbacks and all this stuff, and then suddenly the story gets fucking weird out of nowhere and really bad. You can't admit, like, it's bad. You can't admit that, like, oh, this was pointless to spend that much money on all this. Like, you have to suddenly, like, double down on everything. And, I mean... I think when the New 52 happened, it basically broke me, and I was like, oh, this is a waste of time reading these comic books, you know?
Mhm.
And it was really the last time I read comics that regularly. And that was over a decade ago at this point. But, like, if you stuck with it, I don't know, you must get, like, really weirdly defensive about it. Because, like, you're so caught up in what is correct and what isn't, and canon and continuity, which is relevant.
It's true. People really do get defensive about that. So I had, you know, I'll ask about what's happening with Spider-Man comics on Twitter once in a while, right? Because I'm not on Blue Sky yet.
Yeah.
Anyone out there? If you got a code?
Yeah, we would like a code, please.
Yeah. But I was trying to figure out, like, okay, so Peter. There's also this element of this story where Peter did something that made the other superheroes mad at him, and they don't trust him anymore.
Again, yeah. I think we had the discussion off mic, but the stupid. They have to keep finding convoluted reasons for why Spider-Man can't just work with all the other superheroes.
Yeah. And so someone came into my replies and being like, well, you know, they haven't explained it yet. You know, they're going to get to it. And I'm like, oh, I don't know. I haven't read it, but, like, that wasn't what I was asking.
Mhm.
Like, I just wanted to know, like, what the thrust of the drama was, you know?
Yeah.
Because stories need, like, an engine to get you from point A to point B. You can't describe the engine and not start the vehicle.
And it's so crazy when, like, on paper, superheroes should have the simplest plots of all time, right?
Yeah.
Like, it should just be like, there's a bad guy. He's robbing the bank with his new device. Stop him. Like...
Yeah, or like in the case of Spider-Man, like, oh, a mad science experiment went wrong.
Yeah.
There may or may not be a connection between you and the antagonist. You should sort out your personal drama and see how it, like, interconnects with the action.
Yeah.
That is the precipice of, like, every great Spider-Man story.
Yeah.
In all versions of fiction.
Mm-hmm.
That's the baseline.
But instead we got...
people have trouble with that, though.
we got this, like, nonsense of just, like, multiple universes and devils and continuity.
Yeah. So I did a discussion on the Across the Spider-Verse with Gene and our buddy Jack Godwin from That 90s Spider-Man show. So I just want to jump into Across the Spider-Verse and say you can check out more of my thoughts over there. So I don't want to spend too much time.
Wait a
Just
minute.
ask you.
I know you
what
don't
you
want
thought.
to, but please tell me what happens in the Flash movie.
All right, fine. We'll get to Across the Spider-Verse in a
Sorry,
second.
I just want to know. I
It's
want to
fine.
know what happens.
No, it's fine. So it's actually funny that you mentioned the bank robbery thing, because that's how the movie opens.
Great.
Batman and Wonder Woman are stopping, like, a bank heist that goes wrong. Somehow it ends up with like a hospital, like, falling apart, and so Barry Allen has to use his super speed to save the babies. And I've seen this clip because it circulated on Twitter a lot, where he's running out of energy because he's not eating enough, so he has to consume food while saving babies that are falling out of the sky because the hospital's, like, blowing up or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how they get to the sky. I gotta be honest.
I'll be honest. Like, on paper, babies flying through the air that the Flash has to catch does kind of sound fun.
Yeah. But I've also seen the VFX for the movie.
Yeah, I have too.
I gotta say, people being like, "Oh, well, we made it that way because it was a stylistic decision to show Barry Allen's vision of the Speed Force." No, we've all seen unfinished VFX before. It's fine. no one would give a shit if the movie was good. That's the truth, okay? It's just it doesn't look good. It looks bad. Sorry. That's all. Anyways, so he saves the babies, and then people made fun of him putting one in the microwave. But you see the clip; he's actually hiding. He's like covering it from an explosion, like fire. Because that made sense. I don't know. It's just a weird fucking image, baby in a microwave.
That feels like an Andy Machete joke.
It does,
like based on what I've seen in his other work. So
yeah, like the Chapter 2 bit with the "Just Call Me Angel in the Morning."
Yeah.
No one understands why that needle
to
drops
this
in the
day,
movie.
no one understands why.
Yeah, I would sit him down and be like, "What was that? Look at me when I'm talking to you. What was that?" Sorry, I don't know why I have such a visceral reaction to that movie. So that's the opening of the movie, right? And then there's like a heart-to-heart with Batman and Barry, obviously, because that's what happened to Flashpoint. And Ben Affleck tells him, you can't change the past. The scars make us who we are. I think that's it's decent enough sentiment coming from a Batman, and that's fine. Then Barry's like, "Fuck that! I want to go change the past." Flashpoint happens. I'm just gonna jump to the stuff that's really weird because I think we all know the structure of the movie basically, just because of marketing or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I think it gets really weird when he goes back in time, and I think he loses his powers. Someone will correct me if I'm wrong.
This sounds awful. All of this is bad.
The past version of Barry gets his powers, I think. And so he has to relearn by teaching the other Barry the capabilities of the Speed Force and stuff like that. And he's like, well, I got to go find Batman to get me help. That's how you meet Michael Keaton. If I'm getting any of this wrong, obviously tell me, because this is like hilarious if I'm like just completely misunderstanding the structure of this movie. And from there, they're like, well, we got to work together because now Zod's here because it's 2013 and Zod went to Earth to find Superman, right? To kill Clark Kent, because Man of Steel is canonical to this universe. Michael Shannon gets to come back, which I actually thought was pretty funny. Hear him talk about it.
Yeah, his interviews have been funny.
Yeah, check those out if you're curious. Because he's a very candid person, and who really likes Zack Snyder, which I thought was nice to see too. He was like, "Yeah, I love Zack." Although I have questions about why Zod's there if Superman's not there, because in that movie, a movie I don't even particularly enjoy, although I admire it, Zod finds Superman because he discovers the Fortress of Solitude, which is the Kryptonian ship in the Zack Snyder universe. That activates like a distress signal, if I remember correctly.
He's got to find the codec.
Yeah, well, there's the codex, and then there's also like Superman's DNA has the codex in it too to restore the Kryptonian biology or whatever, right? I know it's really complicated, whatever, but okay, so all of that's there, which is already enough of a mess.
So dumb, man.
I know, but then how I don't understand how Zod gets there. No one's really made it clear.
Why is Superman there?
Would get there? Oh well, it's Supergirl now. It's Kara Zor-El, right? I don't know what happens. I think it's implied that this version of Zod killed Superman as a baby, and Kara is the one that lands on Earth. So I guess in Zack Snyder's version, Kara died? I don't know. That's probably overthinking it. I bet Zack Snyder wasn't even thinking about that when he made that movie.
I bet I don't think thinking was happening a lot involving this movie.
Okay. And my understanding is that when the big showdown's happening, because there's no Superman, you got to work a Supergirl to stop Zod, right?
Does Supergirl destroy all of Metropolis too?
No. So this is why Andy Muschietti can't direct. So he uses these big wide-angle lenses, right?
Yeah.
Like we all see in the trailer, like it looks very weird and distorted. I kind of am into that look. It's something different for these movies. I think the problem is he can't really differentiate when and when not to use them.
Yeah.
So the space and the volume of the areas and the landscapes are all like bizarrely distorted rather than interesting. You know, like you're watching fucking Wong Kar-wai's Fallen Angels or some shit. But there's also just like the element of like, because the fight is no longer in Metropolis, it's in that desert landscape where Superman's supposed to give himself up to Zod, right? In the
Oh, so it
middle of Man
wasn't
of
like
Steel.
it wasn't. I was gonna say, was it just the Smallville fight again?
No. So it's just the desert landscape. You don't really get like you can't play with geography that's flat.
Yeah.
So that's why everyone made fun of it for looking like a PS2 cutscene.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's nothing else to bounce off of there, you know? Like, what a weird decision. But this is the really funny part to me. So, Michael Keaton Batman and Sasha Calle Supergirl, who I hear people really like, and I'm glad we got a brown Supergirl. I'm taking the wins where I can get them, right?
You made some comment an episode ago where you'd be like, "I'm totally fine with the Flash movie because of this decision."
Yeah, life changed you. But okay, so in that fight, they keep losing, and so the berries keep reversing time while they try to win the fight. But because of all the Krypton stuff and an underdeveloped Supergirl character, and Michael Keaton just being a human being with bat toys, the characters keep dying, and so they keep redoing it. Every time they redo it, someone dies in a different way, and this totally wasn't their intention. But it is very funny that it was like, oh, we brought in Supergirl finally. She dies like 100 times. And in fact, because this universe will be reset, she never saves the day. She's just there to die a lot.
Wow.
That was a little insulting to hear.
Wow.
So that goes to show that like no one really thought anything through with this movie. They were just like, let's get some Michael Keaton back.
This does have Jeff
People love
Johns
Michael
stink
Keaton.
all over it. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know how much he had an influence, but this does feel like a Jeff Johns story.
It kind of does, but he didn't produce it or executive produce it. I don't see credits for him on the movie.
But this thing was in production so long, he had to have had some influence on it.
Oh, I'm sure he did, even like uncredited.
Yeah.
But we also have to remember that Ezra Miller, before their crime spree, which is a thing that happened, by the way.
Which is a thing that, and then they were at the premiere, so everything's fine, I guess.
Yeah. What the fuck? Disgusting ass industry. So they pitched the story with Grant Morrison prior to their crime spree.
Oh yeah, there was the Grant Morrison talks that happened for like 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it was not this story that we saw.
Yeah. I would have to imagine.
Yeah. If Grant Morrison pitched a fucking Flash movie, I want to know what that was, you know?
It probably would have been interesting, but also unfilmable. Like...
Yeah. But I'll take that. I'll take a fucking David Lynch level Dune over an Andy Muschietti movie any day.
I guess.
You know? But yeah, that was a pitch in an attempt to usurp the film from the Game Night duo, John Francis Daly and the other guy. I'm sorry. Because they were attached to The Flash after Spider-Man Homecoming, and they were no longer attached to that movie. Those guys have had a weird career. I like their work a lot. I'm there for whatever they do next.
You know what? It's weird. They landed at the exact right place, which was that fucking D&D movie.
Dungeons. Yeah, fun movie.
Really fun, and it's a shame that didn't perform very well.
Yeah. I hope they continue having like success other places, even though that one didn't work out. I like that movie a lot.
The moment that movie hit, talking about like digital releases and DVD, the moment that movie hit digital and DVD, it feels like it's already a cult classic. Like, people are finding it and being like, "This movie rules. What the hell happened?" Like, and so maybe we'll get something out of it, but that's a whole other discussion.
Yeah. I also want to shout out Rick Famuyiwa's version of The Flash.
Of course.
This was like 7 or 8 years ago at this point. It was going to be like kind of a buddy cop thing with him and Cyborg, and it would have like been about like Captain Cold and Golden Glider like being the antagonists, and then would have been more street level and like how Barry's like, oh, like you're super fast, but like, you know, you're still just like at the end of the day, you are a human being and you're gonna make mistakes. And it's been about like this weird like conspiracy in the Central City Police Department or something like that. Like, I don't know. I really like to read his stuff. He's a good director. I'm kind of bummed he's just in Mandalorian land at this point.
Yeah.
I really want him to do more interesting stuff because I like his work.
Yeah.
But I'll never forget when Justice League started bombing and all the stuff started coming out about the nightmare production that had and like all the people that got dropped from DC movies back then. he kind of just tweeted out the Kermit drinking tea thing.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah, so that made me really like him even more. Go watch Dope, everyone.
Yeah,
Dope's good.
That's a movie that feels like it had its moment, and then people just stopped talking about it. Dope's really good.
Yeah.
So check that out.
Yeah. What else do I know about the Flash? The cameos with the dead people.
They
it's
brought
psychotic.
The dead back. The dead speak.
Actually, they don't. They just stand there so we can see them. And then also, Christopher Reeve's Superman universe crashes into Nick Cage's Superman universe, so I guess they're dead? Did you know that?
Who makes movies? Who?
Like, I guess after the movie came out, Andy Muschietti was like, well, it's just like another version of those universes, so they can be okay. It's just like, dude, I gave you the benefit of the doubt at one point in my life, and that's probably why I'm so upset now. But what a psychotic statement. Like, then why even make a movie?
Yeah.
Like, what is anyone doing here? This costs like $500 million or something fucking crazy at the end of the day. Everyone who says, no, it actually costs like $200 million. No. You got to adhere to marketing costs, reshoot costs. They were working on this thing till like the last minute.
The weird thing about it is that like Christina Hodson is like the one credited writer for this movie.
There's no way that's true.
Yeah, like from what I heard, like all the reports that it was like constantly being rewritten because it has none of the vibes of other stuff. Like,
yeah, like if anything, too, she seems to have like a great sense of structure.
Yeah.
Like, you don't even have to love.
Although
Bumblebee
there was the
and
fucking when Birds of Prey came out and suddenly everyone forgot how nonlinear storytelling worked.
Oh yeah.
Remember when that happened?
Yeah, I do. That was strange.
That was a strange moment. And like, she wrote Bumblebee, which is like not like a fucking like great movie, but it's like a perfectly serviceable one,
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah.
Someone just went, what if we did the Iron Giant but with fucking Bumblebee? And it's like, that's probably the right choice. Like,
and actually, to be fair, the other credited writers, John Francis Daly and Jonathan Goldstein,
they all credited. I did not realize.
Yeah, it's like the Colin Trevorrow thing where they did basically a lot of work, even if none of it's on the screen. Apparently, they said some of it was on the screen, but like, I don't think Flashpoint was their thing. Someone named Joby Harold.
His picture doesn't look very good on Wikipedia.
Okay,
looks very angry.
His other credited work is Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead, which I like. Transformers: Rise of the Beasts, Awake, the Hayden Christensen Jessica Alba thriller from 2007, which I think we've actually brought up before.
Yeah, we had brought it up in like the attempt to make Hayden Christensen a movie star era.
Yeah, I liked that movie.
You like Awake?
I do like.
Are you
Awake,
drunk?
No, I have coffee though. And then my favorite, King Arthur: Legend of the Sword, which has like 2,000 writers. So,
yeah,
this movie
very good.
No,
not very good.
No. Well, no, that movie is good. That movie, The Flash, is not good. I bet. I don't know. Again, we're talking about a movie we haven't seen. I don't feel the need to see it.
What about Transformers: Rise of the Beasts?
No Bayhem, no Wayhem. Am I right?
Shut the fuck up. I'll fucking beat you to death with a tire iron. You fuck. Oh.
I don't know. People seem to like it because it's less vulgar.
Yeah.
Which is fine. Which is probably the sane reaction.
Well, some people just want their toys to look fun,
Yeah.
They just want it to be fun. And like you can get away with that for like one movie. But
yeah.
So who knows about the returns on that? What's going on at Paramount? They're doing a bad job releasing movies this year.
Yeah, Scream 6 was like a monster hit.
But it was like a monster hit, but like that was like you felt like they did that on accident. Like,
yeah, because like it's so fucking weird. Here's the thing. Same thing happened with Scream 1 to Scream 2. Huge hit, right? Scream 5, huge hit. Didn't love it, but it was a huge hit. Scream 6 comes out like barely a year after. Like maybe just over a year later.
Yeah.
So they fucking fast-tracked a sequel before the movie was even out. Now, silence. Nothing.
Yeah.
No plans. It's like, obviously they want to do another one, but it's like the radio silence director guys, like they've moved on to not moved on, but they're working on another movie prior to the writers' strike. That they're gonna shoot like in Ireland or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's their next project. Not a word about a Scream 7,
Mm-hmm.
whether you want it or not. Like that's not the point here. Like just dead silence. And I don't know why. Like was from Scream 2 to Scream 3, there was a big gap too, like by 3 years or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But that one feels like just Harvey Weinstein, fucking the Weinstein guys just dicking around and shit. This one I genuinely don't know. So I'm willing to bet it is a mess over at Paramount. Because Transformers, whatever, 9 or whatever, isn't like a big hit either. Like it's doing okay, but it's not like none of these have lived up to the box office returns of the Bay
it feels
films.
like they release it like a week before some other big movie, you know?
Yeah,
and like
I think it was like SPIDERVERSE or something came out like the week before or after it.
And then Dungeons and Dragons is in the middle right there, and it's only released like 2 weeks after Scream 6.
Oh shit! I forgot Dungeons and Dragons was Paramount.
Yeah, they released it because they got the Hasbro deal right now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, they're like in trouble.
They pushed Dungeons and Dragons fairly hard, but like then they just like botched the actual release.
Yeah.
That there's a lot of factors that might have played into that. Maybe you just can't sell a movie called Dungeons and Dragons, you know? Maybe that's
I mean, I don't know if you remember like the trailers and stuff. There were a lot of them, but I was like, it looks like they're kind of just doing a Thor Ragnarok riff.
Well, here's no joke. Here's when I saw the first trailer for Dungeons and Dragons, had no idea there was a D&D movie even coming, right? Like I may have heard vague rumblings, but like didn't pay attention. I'm watching it and it's like, I'm like, it's Chris Pine. Glad he's back. And it's like, he's in a fantasy setting. That's interesting. I haven't seen him do that. And like, I'm watching the trailer. I'm like, this actually looks pretty good. And then it goes Dungeons and Dragons, and I'm like, what? And it was weird. It like had a weird deflating effect. And I'm not even like anti Dungeons and Dragons or anything. It was just like, suddenly I was like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean it's a D&D movie?
Yeah, well, like for me, I was just like, oh, they don't know how to sell this. It must be a mess. And then you see the movie, and it's just like a normal fucking movie.
Yeah.
It's got a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Yeah.
And it's like, why did they try so hard to make it like look confusing? Like it's a pretty straightforward movie.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't understand anything anymore.
But
Paramount, I don't know what the fuck.
And that was
like
the story
they're
about
just
Tom
betting
Cruise
on Tom Cruise
being pissed off that Mission Impossible, whatever, comes out just 1 week before the Oppenheimer Barbie pileup.
Like I don't know how legit that is. I wouldn't be shocked if it was true. I wouldn't be shocked if it was just to build up anticipation for Mission Impossible.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't know, but I don't know what to make of that story.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like because like to what end? You know, like nothing's gonna change about those. Like they're not gonna push that movie back another year.
I mean, I think it might just be like a too late thing. I mean, but he could still be angry about it.
Yeah, yeah. He's really good in Collateral. I always think about that performance.
He is. Oh, hey, I just got added to some fucking Twitter group that's about cryptocurrencies.
Oh, congratulations.
Block!
There you go. That's exactly what I want to hear.
Site's going
I'm looking at my...
Site's going to hell.
I'm looking at my list of favorite movies from 2023 so far. And I've liked a lot of movies I've seen in theaters. Like most of them.
Yeah, you know what? I've hit a bit of a rut with movies, but it was a strong start to the year.
That was my next point.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, and then Across the Spider-Verse, and I guess I'm watching Indiana Jones this weekend at the time of recording.
Yeah.
Does it come out this weekend? I don't know. Yeah. Up until like May, and I was traveling for a lot of May, and I only saw Guardians 3 in theaters again. But like nothing I'm rushing out to see, and now it does look like it's kind of like a dead zone.
Yeah.
Which is why maybe that's why Across the Spider-Verse has also gotten such a rapturous response. It's also the only good movie like in theaters right now.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert. What did you think of Across the Spider-Verse?
I liked it. I'm not as like over the moon about it though as everyone else.
I got hang-ups.
Mainly just because it's like it's a two-parter, you know. and there was a little bit of a like, it's hard to judge a movie that doesn't totally have an ending. That being said, of the movies I've seen that have cliffhanger endings, it's one of the better ones I've seen. But yeah, I liked it. I'm not like in love with it though.
Okay.
I might come around to it once the next part comes out. But also it was because it's also like a lot of the super heavy stuff is the stuff that didn't get resolved, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't know how they're going to bring it in for a landing totally. And there's a lot of ways it could go, and some of them maybe wouldn't be very good. But
yeah.
uh,
That's the show, everyone.
yeah, it's shocking. I actually don't have a lot to say about Across the Spider-Verse.
That's okay. I still do.
Other than the animation was genuinely incredible. And I was at times like blown away by it. All the stuff that was good about the first Spider-Verse is still good here as well. They basically kept everything that worked. But there does feel like a bit of a step up in the animation. And the first one had great animation. So,
yeah.
Voice acting. I talked about, I had a problem with, like, I was worried with all this, like, Spider-Verse talk that they were losing kind of the heart of the Spider-Man character. Where, like, why can't he deal with, like, street-level stuff, like, why? And they actually found a way to thread that needle really well.
Yeah, right?
Which was, like, actually, like, genuinely surprising, considering how much, No Way Home just botched it,
Mm-hmm. By the way, worth reiterating, No Way Home only exists because of the Spider-Verse movie.
Yeah.
I don't know why more people aren't, like, pointing that out more often. I know some nerds just don't care. They're just like, oh, Toby's back. And I'm someone who should absolutely be one of those people. But I have enough self-respect that I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's very strange to me. So the street level thing you're referring to, like, we see a lot of Miles struggling to fit in with his community again,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we also get the Spot. I think what makes them thread that even like more fascinating to me is the fact that the Spot kind of starts off as a joke, and by the end he's like this cosmic entity.
Yeah.
It's like ominous, and he's like, "See you back at home, Spider-Man." And it's like, whoa, the elevation of that character through the movie is like really impressive to me.
And you know what? I heard that Spot was not going to be in the movie initially, until the suggestion of one Avi Arad.
And the world's united in their application of the meme. I'm sorry, I wasn't familiar with your game like that.
Well, it's so weird. It's considering that the other time he did this totally derailed another movie.
Yeah.
So it's like Avi Arad redemption arc.
Look, he's not a worthless producer.
I mean, look,
he's
a lot of
produced good
Spider-Man
movies.
villains have redemption arcs.
Yeah.
So it makes perfect sense.
This is his Doc Ock moment.
Yeah.
He
won't die a monster. He will in the next movie, though.
Aww. I mean, who knows what's happening with that next movie at this point?
Yeah, that's a whole other can of worms. We'll get there.
Yeah. But no, I fucking loved the Spot in this. I don't remember which Daredevil comic. I think it's a Chip Zdarsky Daredevil comic where Daredevil sees the Spot and they illustrate it really quickly, and it's just like horrifying.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like a fucking Junji Ito comic. Although the Spot kind of just looks like that already.
Yeah.
But like even more so. And I was like, man, that's scary. You could make something scary with the Spot. They won't though. And boy, was I wrong. But I also like maybe my favorite little like moment in the movie is when he's like, "You created me, and I created you." And then Miles' dad's like, "Spider-Man, why'd you create that guy?" Yeah, I think what really kind of sells this as a Spider-Man story to me is like how Miles as a character. This is in all versions of Miles Morales as a character that kind of I think gives him his edge. Besides just being another Spider-Man alongside Peter Parker, is that he's much more involved with his community. Like Peter Parker's got communities, but it's less so. You know what I mean? Because he's a white guy. and Miles Morales, I think he's got this. There's a real sense of camaraderie with the people in his life.
I should say,
outside of the superhero stuff.
I should say, white people used to have communities.
Gotta defend.
No, well, there was a time where not all white people were considered white people. Is all I'm saying. Mm-hmm. There was the Italian communities, there was the Greek communities, there were the Jewish communities. There were all sorts of different whites and their communities. And then we gave black people the right to vote, and then white people decided, let's unite to stop that from happening.
Yeah, you got your variety of whites. You got the white, the beige, the moderately tan.
Hey, got some Italian representation there.
Yeah. Well, the spot's Italian because Jason Schwartzman.
I know.
Yeah.
Schwartzman's Italian?
I just assumed you're a Coppola.
Oh yeah, I guess if you're a Coppola, you gotta be. So
yeah. Unless he's been lying this whole time, he's actually like from British Columbia.
Half Polish, Jewish, half Italian. All right.
Oh, you got a nice little. There you go. That's your mixed white.
Yeah. You see, we accept everyone who kind of looks white.
No.
Until we don't need them anymore.
I will say, because I mentioned in the last episode I did on this about hang-ups, I think another one I didn't really nail right away. In the first movie, there's this great sense of Miles as a character where he's expressing himself through his art and his street art, and that's how he kind of comes into his own spider identity, right? It's like the marriage of the superhero with the artistic side that allows him to really become this new sort of cultural icon, frankly. Like, I mean, that first Spider-Verse movie is iconic, and this one's kind of steadily becoming just as like notable, I think, online.
It is interesting that Miles is kind of building in a way where like you could totally see Miles just being Spider-Man without Peter Parker in the future.
Mm-hmm. I'll just say right now, there was a lot of discussion about like, oh, Miles is never going to be Peter. Like, not even from like outright racist. I think this comic nerds accidentally stepping into that. They're like, no, Miles will never usurp Peter Parker. Peter Parker hasn't fucking done shit in like 30 years. It is totally understandable if Miles Morales becomes the identifiable
Isn't like
Spider-Man.
the most interesting thing Peter Parker's done in like the last 30 years in the comics is like dye and Doc Ock went into his body.
Yeah, and it's like that story starts like really strange and off-putting and unfortunately very rapey, and then by the end it's like this ultimate love letter to how great Peter Parker is, and I love that ending. But I'm also like, yeah, it's just about how great Peter Parker is. You don't. That was it. That was like a side one-off story, basically.
Well, here's the thing. I was actually making a point with the community thing, which is that like during Peter Parker as a character's inception, there was more of a community thing. Like there were more local stuff, right? Like, and that has steadily gone away. And it makes more sense for a character like Miles Morales to have the community that, like, it's harder to identify with Peter Parker in this day and age than it is Miles Morales, you know?
Yeah.
Like Miles is much closer to what the youth is than Peter Parker is now. And I think it's a good argument that maybe, like, you know, I'm not saying, like, fucking kill Peter Parker. I would never advocate for that, honestly. But, like, maybe let the guy retire a little bit and let the new kid take over. And it would totally be fine.
Yeah. And to get back to another point that I was making with the Miles thing, because this is one of the slight beefs I have, but, again, maybe resolved with the third movie when it comes out. I was kind of okay with Miles, like, as an artist and not really interested in the sciences, while still being capable of being, like, the science-minded kid. You know what I mean? Like, he's talented in all aspects of life, basically. That's great. I think it's such a great message to have it be, like, you know, like, artistic, like, expressions and endeavors, like, that's just as, like, valid of a lifestyle. That's just as valid a choice as, like, wanting to, spend your life in the sciences. Now, I think it works if it's an extension of, hey, he just misses his spider friends and he wants to get back to them, so that's why he's so interested in sciences versus the first movie now, right? If it's just because, like, that's like what Spider-Man does, I find that significantly less interesting.
Yeah, it did feel to me more just like he wants to try, like deep down he wants to get back with his friends, you know? Like, it felt more of that because he does seem to still have more of the artist bent to everything.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel
Yeah,
like
they
that's
didn't. They
the
definitely didn't
introduction of a
lose it.
character like Ned in the other movies, where like he's the kid in the chair, which it feels like this movie threw some shade at a little bit. But I feel like that works for like he has a friend who is more the tech heavy guy, you know, like.
Yeah.
But hey,
Yeah. Which will also be in the upcoming Insomniac Spider-Man 2 game.
mm-hmm.
Ned will be participating in Miles' stories more proactively,
Hey.
which I think is, again, a nice little addition to that universe. But yeah, I think it's like an open secret now that Ned, or Genki, excuse me, was going to be a bigger part of the first movie, which I didn't know the time I saw it or we recorded our first Spider-Verse episode. And they have said, like, yeah, they cut more of Genki out of that first movie.
Mm-hmm.
To basically just making him like a minor role.
Yeah,
Not
it's
even a
like
supporting
I don't
role.
think he has a single line in the movie.
And that's because Homecoming uses Ned as basically Genki.
Okay.
Which is unfortunate, but I'm also like,
I think it
I don't
improved the
even know where he
story,
goes in this
ultimately.
movie now.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, it's like, it's an unfortunate thing that also maybe made for a better movie.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows?
Yeah.
It's funny how stuff works out sometimes. And to the point about them throwing shade, I don't know if this was intentional, but it's like, you know, they set up like all these different Spider-Man villains in Homecoming that could come back and stuff like that, and they never do. Even to the point where Donald Glover makes a cameo appearance in this as live-action Prowler, because that is who he is in Homecoming. He's Aaron Davis in that movie. And, you know, also partially responsible for the creation of Miles.
But isn't a lot of the stuff with like trying to like Sony desperately wants to do a Sinister Six movie?
Yeah,
which is embarrassing.
Yeah. No, it is. You're right.
So, like, they keep trying to make it. They keep trying to make the Sinister Six happen, and it's just not going to happen.
I know.
So, they got to stop
all the
fucking
kids
spin-offs, man. Like that Craven looks terrible.
Shout out to Jason Chandor.
I know. What the fuck, man?
Hey, you gotta pay bills.
I guess.
Yeah, I'm sorry it came to this.
I think I'm going to tell this story as much as I can so people can hear it, but I did listen to that interview with Nia DaCosta where she said she took the Marvels to pay off student loan debts, and it didn't even help. Like,
God damn.
Yeah. Like, so that's what
I did not know that.
Yeah.
What a fucked up country. What a fucked up world.
Yeah.
Having to make a Marvel movie. No. Oh.
Like, it's very privileged to get to make one, but like no one should have to be in that position.
No, yeah, that's fucked up, you know? I mean, yeah. That's really shitty.
Also, this movie really feels like more so than fucking No Way Home. What a bad title.
I know.
More so than No Way Home, this movie feels like it is desperately trying to make us think the Amazing Spider-Man movies were actually something.
I don't know about that.
There was such an effort in this movie to be like, no, Amazing Spider-Man was important. That movie, those movies happening were important. They needed to happen. Like, there's so many references to it, and it does feel like maybe Sony's trying to do that weird thing you're talking about, where it's like maybe they'll bring Amazing Spider-Man back. Mm-hmm. Like, there's been talks about that, so they can have two different Spider-Man universes. But it just felt like there was a lot of emphasis being placed on Amazing Spider-Man that like didn't need to happen.
A little bit. I mean, the one thing stopping that right now is, I guess, Andrew Garfield's not interested in doing that, which is apparently something that they also try to do for The Flash to get Christian Bale back for that last cameo. That's George Clooney. I don't know if you heard about that.
I did hear a little about that.
Yeah, George Clooney's the final Batman variant in that movie, and it ends on a joke where Barry's like, "Who the fuck is this?" And it's like, yeah, what a great way to end your fucking movie about getting over your mom's death with a George Clooney joke. I love George Clooney. It's not against George Clooney. And so Christian Bale, I guess they're like trying to give him more money than God, like, please be our fucking Batman again. And he's like, well, Christopher Nolan's not involved, so no.
I guess that's why they're really trying to get Nolan back into the fold.
I know, just be like, just do fucking Batman again. Just do fucking Batman again, please.
What if you know, like how Fast X might be the most expensive movie ever made? Have you been reading up on that?
I have been reading up on that.
So what if they literally were like, they went to Nolan, it's like, the first $1 billion movie, but it's got to be a new Batman movie? God damn.
God damn.
God damn.
God damn. I wouldn't put it past this fucking lunatic in charge of that company right
Yeah,
now.
he's not the brightest. So
No. But to go back to your Amazing Spider-Man bit and my Homecoming bit too, I think it's also worth noting some people were commenting online about how we don't see any Tom Holland. Because everyone forgot who Spider-Man was in No Way Home, obviously. And it's like, no. So there's points in the movie you referenced where they see the death of Captain Stacy and Gwen Stacy in those Amazing Spider-Man movies, which are bad movies still. But those are what Miguel calls canon events in this film, played by Oscar Isaac, right? Spider-Man 2099. Now, canon events are these big emotional culmination tragedies that have to happen to every iteration of Spider-Man. Or so he says, which I think is going to be a revelation in the third one. That no, not really, you weirdo. They're not necessary. They're just complicated, whatever, right? We can go back to that eventually.
Well, that felt like the most shade thrown at No Way Home was the idea of canon events.
It totally did.
Yeah.
But there's also the element of... This isn't even me hating what's happened with the MCU Spider-Man at all. This is just what I think is true. There's no real emotional moment equivalence of like the death of Uncle Ben in the first Raimi one, the sacrifice of Doc Ock, even the death of Harry in Spider-Man 3. There's no moments like those in those movies.
They tried to imply that it happened off camera and then they just forgot about it.
Yeah, but like there's just nothing there. Yeah. Like there's Aunt May dying in the third one, but even that one is like it's so... Like, the truth is you could take that out of the movie and nothing changes.
Yeah.
Which is, like, shocking to say about a character like that, right? Or any character. If your movie doesn't change, someone dying, right? If that doesn't affect the plot of your movie, like, they don't need to die. You don't need to have that at all in the movie then.
Yeah.
And I know people are going to fucking, like, try to kill me for saying that, but think about it. I don't think I'm wrong.
Well, that's again. If you want to talk about canon events, that movie ends on that weird note where it's like he goes off on his own, and it's this weird thing of like trying to fit Spider-Man into that box of being the loner who's always tortured by his two separate identities, which is who he's been since the '60s.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like it's not wrong to give him friends, right? Like,
yeah,
how we relate to this kind of stuff has changed, you know. It's growth. You chose to start the story there, which is a little weird, but it's not the wrong thing to do. And it feels like a lot of what they're doing with Tom Holland now is trying to fit him back into this box, which is what, remember when there was like a rumor for a minute they might just do Miles Morales for MCU Spider-Man?
Yeah.
It was like and it feels like they would have just made Miles Morales fit into a Peter Parker box, Mm-hmm. And that seems to be a tension in the comics as well, of like they just want to make him other Peter Parker. And it's like, no, we've changed. Like our relationship to this character has changed, and that's not wrong. And maybe to make it so strict could be, and I guess that's the argument this movie's making, where it's like, because they say like, well, changing a canon event, it could lead to the whole universe collapsing. And there is argument, how much, if you change Spider-Man too much, when does he stop being Spider-Man? If you want to get like on a meta level about it, right? Mm-hmm. That you can do that, where it's like Superman breaking someone's neck maybe doesn't make him Superman anymore. Just to pick a completely random example. But, there clearly is a limit, but like the way it's like, it's enforced. That seems to be the central debate of this movie for like the meta narrative, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know where they're going to land with it exactly. It feels like they're going to just run the Matrix sequels, which I've seen a lot of comparisons to, which I do, honestly, having seen it, I do think are appropriate.
I definitely came out saying like, oh, Spider-Verse Reloaded.
Yeah.
And
to the point where we're 100% getting... Canon event is going to be the red pill of the future. Like,
well, there's already fucking memes about that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you saw that one TikTok video where someone like this young girl videoed her boyfriend and her best friend play fighting, and she was like,
yeah.
"Oh,
you know what? I
when they fight like siblings."
On that, because it was honestly like, I'm like, this is weird. Like,
yeah,
this is.
I just have to say, immediately, because I saw that TikTok before it hit like Twitter, and every comment was like, no, it's a canon event. Like, we can't interfere. And I was just like, oh, this is fucking brutal.
Yeah.
Like, oh no. I'm sorry. I just thought that was too funny not to bring up. And then someone else said it reminded them of Sammy.
That's the one I saw. That it was the Spielberg thing. Like,
that was bad. Best of luck to that trio of friends.
yeah, I hope that's not what's actually happening.
That would be incredible if we were all wrong and they were actually very wholesome. Go with God.
Just
or that's a canon event. No, but see what I mean? Like, it's totally bleeding into like the cultural lexicon. I don't think people really quite understand what the movie's saying with it. Because they're like, oh, I'm gonna step on a Lego. It's a canon event. Like, that's a little funny. I don't think that's what the movie is saying. Exactly.
It's always funny, but I'm just saying, like, 10 years from now, there's going to be a reactionary group called, like, Cannon Fodder or something. And they're going to be like, we're here to enforce canon events. And what we consider canon events is that you shouldn't mix the races. And they're going to be like, oh, no. Like, that's 100% what's going to happen.
Was it you who said 9/11 was a canon?
Yeah, because that's just on brand for me. Like, it is the defining moment of my life. That's not true. But my canon event is getting ulcerative colitis, which isn't that exciting. Every Macaringo in every other universe has gastrointestinal problems. If that doesn't happen, the universe will collapse.
Oh my god.
But
before you get become too much of a self-martyr, I think it's also worth noting that I find that the best Spider-Man stories end up being the ones where the Spider character ends up rejecting that self-martyrdom.
Yeah.
Right? And I think even though like the character's suffering basically makes for some of the most popular memes on the internet, again, because like canon events, it's very funny. But I think the better stories in the Spider-Man mythos, Spider-Person mythos, they understand that the struggles and the tragedies don't have to like really define the character as much as they inform them, you know? So like when everyone's saying, like in the first movie, for example, in Into the Spider-Verse, all the different Spider people are saying like, you know, you don't get to save everyone. Like for me, it was my Uncle Ben, it was Uncle Benjamin. And it's like, okay, well, it's all kind of the same thing. You know what I mean? But they're all still their own people. And I think this movie is such a great continuation of that thread, where it's basically Miles just like rejecting it. Like, these are arbitrary rules that you're using to make sense of this universe, the many universes in this movie. I think that's such a great like conflict, especially because the multiverse is every fucking franchise now, and no one gives a shit about it anymore. This is the real also bonus genius of this movie. It's everything I don't want to see in a Spider-Man movie, done the best possible way ever.
That was what was kind of
all
incredible.
Of this is such bullshit in the comics, and I'm having like visceral emotional reactions when Spider-Man's parents are struggling to connect with him because he can't open up about who he is. You know, he's scared of opening up about who he's growing up to be. And then also, it's just very funny when there's a bunch of different animation styles clashing and breaking the what I thought was possible in Western cinema.
There's something. So, like, the initial wave of this movie was like overwhelmingly positive, right? I haven't really noticed the second wave about the movie itself, but I'm honestly kind of surprised because there are two shots in the movie. Two separate ones where in the background there are very prominent signs for trans lives matter and Black lives matter.
Yeah.
And I was like, the moment people notice that, this is going to become like Spider-Man across the Groomerverse. And I was just surprised that hasn't happened yet.
I think it's just too good.
I guess.
Like, no, because that's never stopped these fuckers. They don't really care about that. Yeah, I don't really know why either. Maybe it's just throwing too much at the audience. You know what I mean? Because like this is the thing. I do think it's a little less well like written than the first one. I think it's much messier.
I don't know. I actually
Everything
thought it was a little better than the first one.
really
Yeah, I felt
okay.
it kind of be a step up. The problem is, of course, that it doesn't really have an ending, which is a problem. Like,
Hmm.
and I kind of have to just be like, well, wait and see what the next one is. Like,
Yeah,
and
which is always the big concern nowadays.
yeah.
Like, I don't like doing that either.
I mean, they could totally facepalm, right? Like, they could totally just
Hmm.
faceplant and just fuck the whole thing up. But, um, hey, what's with the people being upset about Ben Riley?
Oh, I don't know. I think everyone's really defensive over those 90 characters because for all the support I want to give to us younger millennials and the youth younger than us too,
Mm.
I do think we are very embarrassing a lot of the time because we're like, oh, we're breaking generational trauma, we're breaking bounds. Hey, why'd you insult Ben Riley? What's wrong with Ben Riley? The guy who's notorious for like having one good Spider-Man. Not even. Well, maybe that's a stretch. The Clone Saga has an interesting ending, and
Yes,
people like Ben Riley because he's got a hoodie.
Ben Riley.
And yeah, I mean, I guess there's kind of an interesting character with Ben Riley, but also, who cares? I don't know. I also saw people upset that Peter Parker was like, they said they like made him like a dweeb this time, and I'm like, what the fuck? What are you talking? What? What are you even complaining about? Like, if anything, this is like a radical like evolution of it. Like, he gets to be a dad finally, and this one looks like it's gonna stick.
Yeah, for once.
For once, he gets to be a loving husband and father. Has this ever happened? I felt like something has to go wrong here. They're gonna kill the kid or something. Like, I was so paranoid watching this that they were just gonna fuck up like a genuinely interesting direction for Peter Parker. Now, I will say the one thing I don't really buy is that he would go along with Miguel and turn on Miles, and they've left it open enough when him and Miles have that moment while he's on the run, and he's like, "Oh no, I didn't call them," right? They've left it open enough that it could be his fault that he just didn't check his watch, or he did call them. That I'm like, I'm still interested in where that goes. I just don't know if I really buy him going along with all of this.
I don't know. Maybe
Maybe
being a
that's
dad
just me.
changed him.
Maybe
I could see
yeah.
that. You know, now he has this
Mm.
perspective.
I think this is one of the ones I have to see the third one.
Yeah, that's
for
the
me
thing is
to
that like it,
yeah.
and I'll say his best cliffhanger ending since like Empire Strikes Back. Like, it's a terrific kind of like this is a good place to stop.
Yeah, I mean, to the point where, like, as the movie was continuing, I was like, I don't want this to end.
Yeah.
And then it does, and I'm like, okay, that was probably enough because this was almost 2.5 hours long.
Yeah, I did not know that it was 2.5 hours going into it. By the way, I expected
Did you feel it?
another 90-minute animated film,
Oh.
and then I was like, wow, there's a lot happening here. But hey, the only other knot they have to untangle is the prominent cop characters.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting that Miles had a Black Lives Matter sticker on his wall behind him, and his father is a cop.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
who knows what's going on there?
Yeah.
Maybe that's just the third rail they just don't want to touch. But
It is a little difficult, yeah. Because that is one of the things that could just
although
break
a big
the
part of it
story.
is Gwen's who is it in Gwen's universe?
Father.
Yeah, Gwen's father. He left the Force, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's what they're building towards. Because I mean,
yeah.
what is the multiverse Spider Authority but a bunch of cops?
Yeah,
So.
yeah. And you know what? I really like that too. And I talked about that in the other one, but I'm going to talk about it again here. That the movie doesn't shy away from like, hey, Gwen's father did an act of violence towards her when she came out, basically.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people much smarter than I who have discussed the trans metaphors with Gwen stuff specifically.
I've seen some people. I'll just say I've seen some people try to like I guess from like a well-meaning place, like try to like dampen those fires of like that discussion. But I'm like, the Spider-Man as a character is totally about like your own bodily autonomy, you know, like coming to your own truth as to who you are. Like it is 100% that. So like it's not a you're reading too much into this type thing. So I think it's totally appropriate.
Yeah. Also, Gwen is the one who has the trans rights flag.
Yeah.
I mean, if you just want the little cherry on top of that explanation. Yeah, but they don't shy away from like the real like brutality of that moment.
Yeah.
Basically, he shoots at his kid.
Yeah,
man.
it's fucking wild.
Like, yeah.
I think it started so insanely heavy. Like to me, that was like a lot.
No, it was, and this is coming right after Italian Vulture.
Yeah, Italian Vulture, which is just goofy as hell. And also there's a lot of heavy stuff in this that kind of like I don't know, like it wasn't I think my audience reacted really strangely to it, and I think it might have been that heaviness, you know? And I'm not saying that as a complaint. It was just I wasn't expecting it. And there's a constant tension about like what exactly is going on with Miles in his relationship to all the multiverse stuff, you know? There's a real sense of dread throughout most of this movie, even before you get the reveal of what's going on. Which is just interesting for an animated Spider-Man movie.
No, it is, and I think this is also partly why Guillermo del Toro has like gone so hard to bat for this movie, because like it handles like a lot, like you're talking about like emotionally, thematically, and just visually, obviously, which is what I'm sure he's also a big fan of because he believes in quote unquote eye protein, not eye candy. And this is like a 5-star course meal of that shit. But yeah, like the way it handles these emotional elements, like it's not lesser because it's animated. It's kind of another example of maybe these types of stories just thrive in animation, where live action, it's almost like they're cookie cutter in live action, you know?
Or maybe directors who are notorious control freaks are just really attracted to animation.
That might also be the case. And yeah, we shouldn't shy away from recent reports about Lord and Miller, or I think Lord specifically, right?
Well, see, I think it was the one they said Lord specifically, and like Christopher Miller was like barely there on some days. At least that was the story.
Yeah.
I mean, watching this movie, I'm not even joking. Watching it, I was like, I knew a story like that was going to come out. Like, the attention to detail, even to like the smallest little thing. It's like, there's no way someone didn't go insane trying to make this movie. There was a bit of a hope because there was kind of a gap between Spider-Verse. It's been 5 years, you know? So like there was maybe a hope that like that extra time like was used for all that, but it feels like no.
Yeah, we can't divorce the discussion of how much I like this movie, and I think I think maybe even liked it more if you liked it more than the first one. Without
I said I like the
struggles of
the
it.
writing was really good.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's incredibly unfortunate, and someone even made like a tweet about like, wow, this is like the best looking movie that I bet people like kind of suffered miserably over, and nerds just like went crazy against them. They're like, you don't know what you're talking about, and I was like, well, no, unfortunately,
it's unfortunate
considering
in
the
this
talent involved
era where there's the writer's strike happening, and we're possibly getting an actor's strike, but also a lot of people have talked about like that animation unions like are completely different. Like that stuff is the rules are completely different, and time and again, like that's one of the more exploited areas. You know, I think someone just talked about how they had something like 5 shows in the top 10 of Netflix. They were all animated, and they got royalties of like $400 for that. Like, and it is this thing of like it's putting animation under a bit of a microscope because you feel like there is a bit of a pivot towards animation happening. And part of it feels like the line between just filmmaking and animation is blurring so much because of how digital technology is going. But also it does feel like it's a cheaper way to make these movies because you get to work around union rules, you know?
And the budget for this movie was $100 million.
Mm-hmm.
My first thought was, That's so fucking impressive. No one has any excuse for movies to look like dog shit anymore.
Mm-hmm.
My second thought, after I had a moment to compose myself, was, oh no,
Yeah.
how many people did they underpay?
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's a little, and it's that worry of like Guillermo del Toro made that announcement of like that he's only going to do a few more live action movies and he's pivoting to animation, and it feels like part of that is that he, I don't know if he's thinking of it this way, but he could probably get more done through animation because they underpay the animators. I mean, that's what it comes down to,
Yeah.
and it's a shame, and we have to change our relationship to capital, basically. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's everything we're doing is unsustainable and abusive towards workers, and there is the worry I feel is that at some point studios are going to start going like, you can't like people can't have their toys now because we can't abuse the workers that make them. And like you said, with people jumping down that one person's throat about like, well, you don't know anything if animators were abused. I wonder if it's that thing of like, would you rather live in a world where Across the Spider-Verse exists, but workers were, overworked? Or would you rather have workers, be paid fairly and not driven to stress, but something like Across the Spider-Verse couldn't be made as a result? And I wonder what would happen if more people got to that crossroads,
Yeah.
And I mean, and this goes for a lot of things. I mean, there are movies that are quote unquote canonical films that were made through abuse and taking advantage of people and underpaying workers, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, your favorite guy, George Lucas, a big part of how those prequels were made were to work around unions. He was financing them independently, but it still was what he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
Something people tend to gloss over when we talk about that guy. And it's that thing of, would you rather the Star Wars sequels? Would you rather the Star Wars movies not exist? Or would you rather people be paid fairly? And I think that's a question we all have to start asking ourselves. And like the obvious one is yes, like pay people fairly. But, I think we have to change our relationship to film a lot. And I think this movie's a good example because most people are coming out of this movie raving, but now that we know what it took to make it, how do we feel? Like, and now that like the other one is still in production, what's going to happen there, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and
Not only is
unfortunately,
it
the only other arena where this sort of stuff has been tested is the video game arena. And no matter how many stories of people basically getting themselves killed to make AAA video games, gamers still eat that shit up,
mm-hmm.
Like, it hasn't slowed them down. So is that now just going to happen with every other entertainment industry thing? And I don't know. Um,
Yeah, I mean, not only is the next movie still in development, like it's definitely not making the next year release date.
mm.
Uh, they they might not make the year after that at this
Is
point.
that
Frankly,
what you think that's what's going to happen?
I think so. Especially if there are eyes on it right now. It's too early to tell how many eyes are in it
Mm.
after that THR report came out.
Yeah.
I think it was THR. It was someone. Um, as, but I don't know how long it's gonna be. However, that movie turns out,
Mm.
you know, and
'Cause I mean, honestly,
it's it's gonna be essential to keep an eye on that one.
moving release dates is one of the harder things to honestly do in this industry right now because it's so much
Yeah.
about meeting shareholder expectations.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I wouldn't be shocked if like they don't pump the brakes on this thing, and
Yeah.
we'll see what happens. And but also like
Yeah.
we're gonna see it too, which I hate to admit it, but we probably are gonna see it. Like,
Yeah.
it's not like we're gonna be like, well, no. So things are fucked up.
Yeah. I've, it's yeah. I think you have a good point. This is a very important movie for reasons I think we didn't expect going into it.
Yeah.
Frankly, that it's might be a dividing line between how movies operated in one era
Mhm.
before and how they're going to
I
operate
guess what I'm
after.
saying is that like the type of like IP driven, franchise driven way the studios are right now, will not be able to carry over to an industry where workers are treated fair. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think what I'm saying is that we have to let these franchises go, essentially to make just a safe workplace for workers, right? That's more what it's about. And now, are we willing to do that?
Yeah.
And I don't
And
know.
you know what? To be optimistic, I think most people are willing to do that.
Mm.
Because look at how the response to the writer's strike.
Mm.
Look at the response to the other people striking. There's like fucking chef unions that are gonna go on strike apparently and stuff like that too. Like it's not just one industry anymore. It's everyone saying, "Hey, it's not possible to live under the current economic conditions we have had thrust upon us."
No, we're at a breaking point, like with the economy.
Yeah.
Like it's just where we're at. Like we're at a huge breaking point, and neither party really has an answer to it.
Yep.
And it's an interesting moment. I think the workers thing. I think if you look at what's going on in Michigan, where they've tied social issues to workers' issues, I think that's the path forward because those 100% are interconnected. But I also think a lot of the support for the writer's strike, even for like, people know that like VFX people are abused and you see people angry about that. But I think a lot of what you see is people going, make my toys better, as opposed to don't make my toys at all if you're going to hurt people to make them, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that shift will happen. It's just a little, it's one of those things, it's concerning.
Yeah.
But we will see where things go going forward. Excellent movie. I do recommend it. But now that we all know these things, you can make the decision about whether or not you want to pay to see it in theaters. I don't know. Interesting. Animation's gotten interesting lately, and I feel like it's just one of those things where, again, it's just going to be more about like, I think some people are getting taken advantage of somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But now we got that fucking Ninja Turtles movie, which looks like it's trying to do a Spider-Verse thing a little bit.
Yeah, it looks but like grimier.
Yeah.
Because it's like they're mutants and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, that looks good. I like the Ninja Turtles. I hope Seth Rogen isn't like a secret maniac and he's like sweatshops.
Seth Rogen might be one of those guys. I don't know. Like, here's the thing. It sounds like the Lord Miller guys, they might have known what was going on. Sometimes I think these fucking creative types, they just don't think about the people that actually have to make the stuff, which is its own kind of deplorable, but isn't like outright evil,
Yeah,
But you see a lot more of that, where you have people being like not considering the labor that goes into making their visions come true.
Mm-hmm.
So, hey.
Yeah. Yeah. Still like the movie. Would also still recommend it. There's still a lot of stuff we didn't talk about. It's very packed. So, if for whatever reason what you're primarily taking away from this discussion is how long do I have to wait for the next one? I don't know. You've got enough to go over with this movie and the first one already. If that's your simplistic takeaway from it, yeah, you got two excellent movies to dwell on. There you go. I hope fucking animators get paid their dues and don't have to lose their minds to do a job that they love. Yeah. It's a bare minimum. You can't even cross that bar.
I hope we just can find a way to make Hollywood work without venture capitalists being involved. Without that shit. But I don't know where that goes. We've built the industry up so high that it takes that sort of ridiculous wealth to make anything now. So
well, it's the collapse that's happening.
Yeah.
I've been saying for a while it's gonna fucking like just become like this weird place where independent films will be able to thrive because they won't be made for hundreds of millions of dollars, And that doesn't mean they're all going to be good or noteworthy. I'm just saying, I think we're gonna
that when this collapse comes, that has been decades in the works because it's just venture capitalist vampires sucking all the money out of everything good in the world, that they're going to turn around and be like, hey, people started unionizing right around the times of the collapse. It must be the union's fault. So that's what I'm on the lookout for, because that's you see that blame happen a lot,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, some fucking headlines are like, well, the writers haven't taken the deal, so that's why your shows aren't coming back in the fall.
Yeah.
Because no shows will be coming back in the fall. And that's a good thing because they haven't been given a fair deal yet.
Mm-hmm.
You might have to wait a while before you see stuff you used to like on TV. Then that's going to be a good thing, hopefully. And you just got to remember that right now, because that's and support your local guilds and shit. If you're in LA, the picket lines could always use more snacks and water. Check out some of the people in the Twitter sphere to raise voices if you can't make it to picket lines. David Zaslav is a human being with a home and address.
I'm not willing to say that. I am not
Okay,
endorsing that.
I'm just saying we all have a home and address.
Yeah, I'm not endorsing that. Although make him feel comfortable.
I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying he's a human being who has a house where he lives.
Yeah.
But that's it. Weird discussion today, I think.
Yeah, not the one we expected, maybe.
No,
but I'm glad we had it.
Yeah, and I will also shout out the actual 3 directors of Across the Spider-Verse, and I believe Beyond the Spider-Verse still. Mm-hmm. We will see how that goes.
And none of these guys are the returning people from Into the Spider-Verse, right?
Nope.
So that might say something.
Yeah. Although they all got producer credit, which is not enough, frankly, considering what we know now. But Justin K. Thompson, Kemp Powers, and Joaquim Dos Santos are the 3 credited directors of Spider-Verse. Mm-hmm. And I have not seen a single interview with one of them.
Hey, that might be for a reason.
Yeah. Joaquim Dos Santos from Legend of Korra, Avatar fame, killer director. I hope he continues to work in the animation world after this, because it was cool to see his glow up. Mm-hmm. And he gets he should get his spot in the limelight. But we will see. Matt, thanks for joining me on this incredibly strange discussion today.
Yes.
I do think it was one worth having. And I don't feel miserable after it also.
Yeah, I don't.
I'm
I
don't.
Yeah.
I think it's important to talk
about the state of the industry. It feels like more people are waking up, you know.
Yeah.
I try not to be totally blind to possible challenges ahead. But it does feel like ultimately we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah. Maybe this is our canon event.
I know.
Yeah.
I mean, is Trump's election canon?
Oh my god. You know what? No.
That changed a lot of things.
It did, but it also feels very specific to our universe. Yeah. Whereas 9/11 feels like it could happen anywhere in the multiverse.
Were you George Bush's scriptwriter after 9/11?
Yeah.
Feels like 9/11 could happen anywhere. So we need the Patriot Act.
Yeah. Spider-Bush?
No, hey, there was a cowboy. There was a cowboy Spider-Man.
Yeah. Fool me once, Green Goblin, shame on you. Fool me twice.
You can't get fooled again.
Twice once. Can't get fooled again.
Oh, man.
Thwip.
What a guy that we actually elected president.
Yeah. No one talks about it this way, but I mean, on par with Trump as one of the worst people who's ever held public office.
Here's the thing. Here's something I'm honestly gonna say. Basically since Nixon, like all the Republican presidents have been equally evil. It's just Trump didn't know how to shut the fuck up about it. Like
he didn't have the respectability politics.
Yeah, the other ones were good at being like, we can pretend we actually care about people. And Trump was like, I want to kill all the Mexicans. Like, so it wasn't. There wasn't really a big shift. It was just a lot of the masks came off, both literally and figuratively. Goddamn, how is that literally what happened?
I don't know anymore. Life is a parody
There must
of
be a fucking order to the universe if those two things both happened. Like, if that was in a story, I'd be like, that's way too on the nose. Like...
Yeah. Well, that's why James Cameron villains have aged so well.
Yeah.
It's like, oh no, they just talk like that now.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. They're screwing each other over for a goddamn percentage. That's from Aliens.
Yeah, that line's a little silly.
but it's also exactly the case, which is unfortunate, you know?
I think the better is Burgess being like, I made a decision, Ripley, and it was wrong. It was like him trying to downplay what happened.
Bad, Ripley. It was a bad call. It's like 200 people killed.
Yeah, you got a whole colony of people killed, like horribly,
including children. Like Jesus Christ, man. Yeah, that does seem like it. Trump, like, you know, it was a bad call. It was a bad call.
Who knew? That would be Trump. Who knew this would go this way?
Yeah.
You're just telling me this now.
Yeah, there was Xenomorphs in LV-426. I'm hearing this for the first time.
God damn.
The androids were defective?
Possibly our president again.
Oh boy.
What a time.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We've been professionally and professional.
What if we went to the multiverse and we got the Onion version of Joe Biden and replaced our Joe Biden?
That would be awesome. And I'm convinced that's exactly what happened when that one journalist asked if he was going to attend the coronation. He goes, "I'm Irish," and walks away. That's the most I've ever liked Joe Biden.
I'm just saying, there's something going on with that guy. I think that's why he's so loopy. He's seeing the multiverse.
I'm gonna end with that TikTok I told you about with the Joe Biden impersonator. All right, goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone. Merry Christmas.
Joe Biden is my favorite president we've ever had. Oh, shut up. He is the first president in my lifetime that nobody is able to call Hitler with a straight face. Every time he's on TV, he just kind of gets lost in thought. He kind of faces a wall away from the camera. And then he says a cliche that it kind of sounds like he made up. It'll be like, you know, the soup got cold, but the crackers are hot. Hey, just because you train a pumpkin with karate, don't make him a soldier. Some of the things this man says, they sound like you wake up from a nightmare. Mr. President, how do you feel about inflation? Hey, just because the green man can't see you, don't mean he won't find you.